Did you guys do anything cool this weekend?
And kids interview Wilma. Why is my song not playing right now? Live, we are live. Why am I not hearing any music? Broadcaster chat. Yeah, I was coaching until freaking I'm ready to skip because the music is not playing for some reason, so I'm gonna skip and go.
This is so sad. Our friend posted about their son running track and being a track star, but I think he's in last place in this. Are we live? Wait, what's happening?
All right, everything's acting screwy today. What's going on? Miguel, the host of Life Full Circle Radio. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? So, a lot going on this week as OJ passed away. Trump is on trial. Caitlin Clark, almost said Caitlyn Jenner because that attaches to OJ, right? But Caitlin Clark was just drafted #1 in the WNBA draft. We're gonna talk about that. And we've got a guest that's gonna come on, Brandon Wodds. We're gonna talk about this Iran-Israel conflict because it is getting pretty ugly. There's some people who are in the space who really believe that this might be the beginning of some really, really serious conflict, maybe World War III, even though we've been saying that for a while. It doesn't look good because the U.S. is going to get pulled in and they're going to make a decision on what to do. All right, first time tuning to Life on Circle Radio. I'm your host, co-host. Be up here in just a second. This is our social media page. This is our YouTube page. We're live right now here, Facebook, Twitch, a little bit of other places as well with the show. Super producer.
What up, what up, what up? Happy Monday.
Man, I was out in them production streets the last couple of weeks and stuff got all disconnected and I had to put my little studio back together and all right, it is what it is. You want to see a piece of some of our fly production we did last week?
Sure, why not? Let's share it with the world.
Because we actually work around here. We actually got jobs.
Yeah, we got jobs, y'all.
Yeah,
we got jobs.
We got jobs, y'all. And so one of the things we do here, we are a marketing production company. I got my little LMG shirt on, my new brand today. You like my new brand? Yeah. Where's my Safari button? Everything tripping. So here we go. All right. Check this out. We had an opportunity to do some service work at Mays High School in the good A, and this was what we put together as our recap.
A lot of folks want to be influencers, and the goal is to get to 100,000 followers, or 1 million followers, or something. To have folks follow you, to have some folks you don't know follow you. That's what's considered being influential. That's foolishness. I challenge you to believe that you are indeed influential because somebody in this room watches you daily. Somebody in this school watches you daily. You are influential to somebody. You are influential to one. You may be influential to 10. You may be influential to 100. And I don't know how many social media followers you have, but you are an influencer. I'm gonna each one teach one, each one reach one. I'm gonna show love to the brothers. Love ought to look like something that we're going to put some money in your pocket. Love ought to look like this brotherhood summit that we're in. Love ought to look like the Emerging 100 and the 100 Black Men and all these nonprofits. Love ought to look like something. So when somebody else tells you they love you and it don't look like that, then that ain't love. So be an influencer, show love, and give your best in all that you do. And you just might live up to that legacy that Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays said.
Here's the funny thing about that at the end. You saw the noops when we threw up the yo, right? So we sitting there. So people don't know, that was the mayor of Atlanta that we were hanging out with. So I said
I thought you were gonna say if people don't know that you're a Kappa, because everybody.
No, I
knows
didn't.
at
I
this
wasn't going to say that. People already know that. They watch the
All
show.
right.
They know. But I would say, yo, we're going to throw up the yo. Nobody said anything. Everybody else threw up the yo, and I didn't. If he was, the news was like, yo, what? Why you the picture? You ain't throw up the yo? I was like, I didn't realize everybody did. So no, that was great. Funny thing
Now
about
you gotta
that
Photoshop
was,
your hands. Now you have to
right.
Photoshop your hands, so
Nah,
it looks like
it's
you're
all
doing
good.
it.
Nope. Just it runs off me. Anyway, so the funny thing about it was, I saw it, and all of a sudden, I saw the city of Atlanta posted it, and I saw the mayor posted it, and they was just like, yo, whoever did that, we need to get them under contract. So we may be starting to do a little work for the mayor. So we'll see.
We're famous, and by we, I mean them, because I'm adjacent. Quick question.
Yeah.
Just hypothetical, before we get into the show, just hypothetical.
Yeah.
If somebody pledged a white fraternity, could they then come and pledge a black fraternity? Just wondering. Maybe for a certain Guyanese husband who pledged the wrong fraternity and needs to do a redo. Can he do a redo?
I don't know. I don't know how his fraternity would do it. We wouldn't if he pledged. But there are people. Now let me correct that. There are people who may be a part. Can you hear me? Something just happened.
I can hear you. I hear you.
Weird. Something just happened.
You just went low.
There you go. That better?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's better.
So there are some people who are part of some of the other academic fraternities. There's some people who may be Kappa Kappa Psi, which is a band fraternity, and they may also be one of the Black Greeks. So I guess I don't see why not.
Okay.
And there's grad chapters.
Maybe one day him and I will consider doing it together. That day might be coming for me as well. So,
Okay.
Might be. Anyway, let's get the show on and popping. Let's leave.
So anyway, let's get into the show because we have a guest coming on today, and we don't want to get you in trouble because you know how that works. You start talking too much.
I do.
Exactly.
All right, so let's lead with.
Let's lead. You want to talk about Orenthal James Simpson?
Probably one of the most shocking deaths we've seen this year has been the death of Orenthal James Simpson, aka O.J. Simpson, aka the Juice, aka Suspect Number One, aka we know he did it. But he actually passed away from prostate cancer.
You know he did it.
We all know. You know he did it.
You know he did it.
Okay.
I always thought
he passed away from prostate cancer.
I always thought his son did it, but go ahead.
Apparently we'll do this and we'll go back to that. But yes, he passed away of prostate cancer, and he'd been suffering from prostate cancer for at least the past 3 months. And kind of been suffering in silence. It hadn't been made a big deal. But he passed away. And people have mixed reviews about it. Some people are holding up his legacy as this untarnished, amazing thing. Other people are saying that he's a murderer. Mm-hmm. Other people are saying that even though he's not a murderer, he is a convicted felon, which he is a convicted felon. He did participate in an armed robbery.
Yes.
And he did 13 years in jail for that. He participated in an armed robbery.
13 years?
No, he was in jail for 13 years.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize he was in jail that long. Really? He was in jail for 13 years. Okay.
I think it was 13 years.
I don't think he was in jail that long, but he was in jail. I do remember he did go to jail, but he was found. They always correct you when people say he was found guilty. He was not found guilty. He was found he was found responsible for the death.
He was found. It's called civilly liable. That's what it is. It's
there you go. He was found civilly liable.
Civilly liable is completely different because you only need to kind of prove like 60% of not prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. You have to prove to the preponderance of the evidence. I forgot what the wording is, but he just kind of doesn't seem most likely to you that he did this. And to all of us in America, black, white, blue, or green, do we think he kind of did this or was kind of involved? Absolutely. That's just common knowledge. Even if you think that it was his son?
I've always thought it was his son. They say that supposedly the guy, I forget his name, the guy was murdered. He was a 3rd-degree black belt. A lot of things about it says OJ was a little old to be able to do everything he supposedly had done. But his son, I always kind of felt his son was involved. But regardless, the Caitlyn Jenner coming out with good riddance and the responses the public made to that. One thing in this day and age of social media, you're going to get a response for everything by somebody. Somebody is going to give you some response. And so, you have people who were cheering his death. You have people who were just kind of silent about it. People like me sitting back like, it's almost like you're glad that it's somewhat over. because of the fact that was something that we had to deal with as a community for so many years. And I'm glad that it's no longer something we have to deal with. But, you know, I don't know, man. OJ's going, whatever. He's had the ultimate trial now. You know what I'm saying? When it's all said and done, whatever happened in his life, he is paying the price, or he's living in glory at this point.
And I don't think you should ever be happy about anybody's death. I don't care. I get it. There are people off in the world, but death is death, and it's really bad that this happened. I feel like OJ did it, or had somebody do it when it comes to Nicole Brown and OJ Simpson. I do feel awful that he's tarnished his legacy. But if you remember, he tarnished his legacy before the murder even happened. He had been abusive to Nicole Brown Simpson. We all heard
before the murder had happened. No, I don't agree with that. No, not before the murder had happened. No, most of us wouldn't even.
Let me rephrase that. OJ Simpson was not a member of the Black community. The way all of us are claiming OJ now is ridiculous compared to how he acted back then, right or wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think that the conversation around this is, and it's unfortunate, but Black folks in general, when it comes down to the justice system, always lose. And in these, you know, on the larger scale of things, you just saw somebody last week in Chicago, 96 shots were fired upon this young man. They say he shot at them. They fired off 96 shots. While he was laying on the ground, it was still bang, 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 bang. This is stuff that they don't even put this stuff on the news anymore. 5-7 years ago, this is something that would have been front page news. It doesn't even sniff MSNBC, CNN, anything else anymore, because all they want to do is talk about Trump. Point being is that with OJ, it really unfortunately became a black versus white thing. It really became this, you know, hey, if we win, it's a win for the black community because, you know, obviously, you know, let's not escape the history. Yeah, for many, many years, you know, the general public got away with killing a lot and lynching a lot of black people. Going back to Emmett Till, you know, off the top of my head. So
you're absolutely right. But OJ did, what OJ was accused of, and allegedly. No, it's not allegedly. He was accused of it, but you know, he was a suspect in this murder. He was allegedly. He wasn't allegedly accused. He actually was accused. He wasn't convicted
or accused. I said allegedly or accused. I didn't say allegedly.
Thank you.
Accused.
Let's just use right verbiage.
I didn't say that. Go ahead.
I think I also blame OJ, and it's not OJ's fault that this happened, but I think OJ and the Menendez brothers, they're the two cases that ushered in this thirst for true crime. And I think that can always be hung on the O.J. Simpson trial. People were running home from lunch breaks or calling like, girl, you home watching it? Oh, grandma, I know you're not working. Can you do what'd you see? And then when the verdict happened, I was in elementary school. I remember the teachers requesting the principal bring TVs into the classroom. I remember that thinking, are y'all serious? This is weird. Every teacher had a TV brought into their classroom. I was 10. Where were you when the verdict happened?
I don't know where it was when the verdict happened. When I remember when the drive was going, because it was in June. It was during the NBA Finals.
I don't remember that.
It was the Houston. I'm telling you, it was Houston Rockets versus New York Knicks. And so I remember they had a split screen where it was like you watching the game over here and you watching OJ.
Omar remembers that, yeah.
Bronco over here, and that's what I remember. When it came down to the trial, I don't remember where I was. I do remember that it was a sigh of relief, which is unfortunate. It's just, you know, because I don't give a doggone who it is. The fact that these people were murdered is a travesty. It's terrible.
Brutally
murdered. You know, there's people who say, you know, it could have been a drug hit. You know, obviously they said the guy. What is the young guy's name who got killed? Was it Goldman?
Ron Goldman.
Ron Goldman supposedly was her drug guy, whatever, and that could have had something to do with it. Regardless, it's just terrible to think about it. But OJ spent the last, what year is this now? Almost 30. It's been 30 years.
It's been 30 years. Yes.
It's been 30 years. He spent
the rest
29
as a
years.
pariah. Yeah. And what made his pariahism, I don't even know the word worse, is when the robbery happened in Las Vegas. We all remember the robbery in Las Vegas where he wanted his memorabilia back. He thought because he had signed it, it belonged to him as his likeness, that he could be able to have it back. Right. And that's not how memorabilia works. Once it's sold, you can't just go. Yeah, somebody had a gun, and that made it an armed robbery and not a kidnapping, something else, because they kept them in the room confined with the gun. That makes it a very dangerous situation. So he actually didn't do 13 years. He did 10 years for that. and he got out on
10
parole.
years is still more than I thought, but that should have showed you how much I paid. It's funny with Trey and I, kind of off subject, but still on subject. It's funny. Trey and I were driving, and I was just like, there's so many people's careers that the last 20 years have been like a blur. Like Chris Brown's been out almost 20 years. I'm like, what? Chris Brown's been out almost 20 years. And I've almost totally
Usher's been out.
Well, Usher's
almost
been out
30 years.
Almost 30 years. Yeah. And so when you look at these, the last few years, and when you say that OJ was in jail for 10 years, it just was one of the things to me, like, wow, OJ was in jail for 10 years. It was a blur. Once the trial, I wasn't paying any attention to OJ. Obviously, he was out of the public light for the most part. I guess he's been out maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe more.
It's been a minute. I think it's been about 70. But did you watch the OJ documentary? Not the series on Netflix with Cuba Gooding Jr., who should have never played OJ. Did you watch the actual documentary Made in America? Did you watch that?
Yes, I did. I don't remember much about it.
Made in America was an awesome documentary about OJ's life. Like, it doesn't cover the trial. The first 4 episodes are just about OJ's life. Him going to the Bears, him playing for this team, him playing in college, his marriage, his kids. And they do 1 episode on the trial, and they do 2 episodes after. And you see how he was treated after, even though he assumed being found not guilty meant something.
Yeah.
And it didn't. It meant absolutely nothing. It didn't mean anything. Yeah, but it just meant that you ain't going to jail.
Yeah, it just connects the dots with the Jay-Z song, the OJ song that he made. I'm not black, I'm OJ, and he's like, okay, because OJ, from that documentary you talked about, it went back to his history where when he was in the middle of potentially being a major civil rights activist, he said, I'm not doing that. When
he did not want to do it.
And Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown and all of those, that famous picture of all of them together at that press conference, OJ was not there, and he was a superstar at that time. He should have been there. But he made the decision early on that that's not who I am. You know what I mean? I'm going to be the acceptable Negro. And that's what he did. And he thought he was there until this trial, and then he realized that he was black. But he really
needed to go back to black.
After everything went down, because that's when he started.
Thank God for Johnny Cochran, because Johnny Cochran is who made him black to us again. Yeah. I mean, that's the truth. But
yeah, yell to the noob.
And I feel bad because honestly, I don't remember really quick. Just I feel bad for his children. I know his children actually live in St. Pete, where I'm from.
Okay.
Sydney and Justin, but I think one of them has passed away, but I can't remember which one had actually passed away.
Oh, I don't know about that. And his son could walk by me tomorrow, and I wouldn't know who he was. I think they've all really, because he had 2 children by his first wife, his black wife, and then he had 2 children by Nicole Brown.
So together, his first wife Marguerite had Arnell, Jason, he's the one you think did it, Irene, who was a baby, who died as a baby.
Oh, okay.
She died in the swimming pool, and then Nicole had she actually broke up their marriage, Nicole did, and then he had a baby. The children's are Sydney. Yeah, Sydney and Justin are both alive. So yeah, Sydney, Brooke, and Justin. And both of Sydney, I think, is the one. Sydney, actually, when I looked at the map, I was like, oh, you live a half a mile away from where I grew up. Like, Sydney lives around the corner.
Okay, got it.
She's old. Yeah, so anyway, is our guest here?
Yeah, I guess it's here. So as we to wrap up the OJ conversation, his legacy, as one of the greatest running backs in history, and he was a great pitch man, NFL guy, all of that broadcasting stuff, and we'll never remember any of that, and most people will not remember any of that. All right, so we got a lot more we're going to talk about after, I guess, but everything's been going on. It's almost like it was October the 7th is when the latest conflict with Israel kicked off in what's going on right now. But we know it's really been going on off and on for the last 70 years, 70. And so a few months back, we had a couple of guests on, talked a little bit about this. But one of the guests we had on, we wanted to have him back on, Brandon Wodds, who is a former military officer who worked in intelligence. And so last week, as all this stuff is going on, we're preparing for the Trump trial, and we're looking at basketball, and Caitlyn Jenner's being drafted and all this stuff. There's a potential of World War III that's going to happen over here because they are still fighting significantly in the Middle East. And so I wanted to have some conversations about this and bring on our guy Brandon to see if he can give us some insight, give his insight on what's going on. Brandon, what's going on, my brother?
Hey, how are you guys doing? Thanks for
Man,
having
we're
me
good.
back on.
Good.
We're good. Glad to have you back on, brother. And so we were driving this weekend. We were busy with the girls, basketball, and middle of the drive. Trey's like, you should have Brandon back on. to talk about what's going on
I appreciate that. I
in the
wish
middle. I said, we should. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Well, I wish there wasn't as much going on in the world to talk about, but there is. So here we are.
Yes. So we had you on, probably 4 or 5 months ago, and we talked about what was happening then, and we got your perspective. And the one thing we do here at Life of Circle Radio, we know what we know, we know what we don't know. This is something that we don't know. They give us one perspective. You do as much research as you can. But when there's someone who's been in the middle of those conflicts, to get your perspective was important. And so tell us about what you believe, how things are going overseas, and give us your perspective on that, please.
Well, since we last spoke, a lot has happened. How's my audio, by the way? Do I sound
You're
good?
fine. You're perfectly fine.
Okay, excellent. So so since we last spoke, obviously, the events of October 7th of last year were tremendous. You had a horrific attack by Hamas against Israel. And weeks later, Israel ended up invading Gaza in order to destroy Hamas, was their stated military objective. Obviously, Gaza is a very densely populated area where you've got over 2 million people. There have been a tremendous number of Palestinian civilian casualties, as many as 33,000, I think the current estimates are up to. Roughly half women and children, and obviously that has been a political issue and challenge in and of itself. But there have been other things going on throughout the region. The Houthis, who are a ally or a proxy of Iran, as well as, so the Houthis being based out of Yemen, a Shia group out of Yemen, and then you have Hezbollah out of Lebanon, have been fighting with Israel and to a certain extent with the United States as it relates to this conflict, basically in support of the Palestinians. But probably the most significant event that we've seen in quite some time in the region from 2 days ago was a Iranian attack against Israel, a significant attack, which was in response to Israel attacking a Iranian embassy complex in Lebanon. So it wasn't the main embassy, but it was a consulate part. But it was based. Embassies are considered to be sovereign territory.
Right.
Israel bombed that location, killed several Iranians, including a high-level Al-Quds Forces commander. And Iran vowed revenge, and they took that revenge 2 days ago.
So when you look at this, we know that Iran is the one is one in that area. We really don't. Let me straighten this thing out. It's bothering me. We don't really want to play with Iran, right? They're much more organized, a country, much more organized military. We kind of destroyed Iraq and their infrastructure, and they're still trying to rebuild. But Iran has been one that we've had to deal with for years. They say that they are nuclear capable. Others say they're not nuclear capable. But it's a problem.
And they're also notoriously isolated. Like Iran is also notoriously very isolated. Even people who are, I'm just, and correct me if I'm wrong, people who are Iranian who were basically exiled for whatever reason are not even allowed to step foot back in the country, or they will be arrested or killed. That's how isolated they are, keeping everybody kind of within their country. No one's allowed in. There is no aid. There is no nothing. It's just Iran. That's correct, right?
Similar to China. But
that is correct. Yeah, Iran has an Islamic state, basically ruled by the Ayatollah. This has been the case since 1980. And we, the United States and many other Western countries, have not had normalized diplomatic relations with Iran really since 1980. So they just a little bit of background, but they took the U.S. embassy during the Carter administration. There was an operation to try to free the hostages. Then the Iranians fought a long war with Iraq that went on for about 8 years, the Iran-Iraq War, that the United States we backed Saddam Hussein in that war against the Iranians. And you had 600,000 Iranians died during that war. So, but to your point, Iran is a significant country. The population of Iran is 10x the population of Israel. Israel's population is around 10 million people. Iran's population is around 90 million people. Not to go all CIA fact book here, but just to provide some context.
But that's good context, because the 90 million people is a significant nation. That's a significant nation. So continue, bro.
Significant nation in size, population. Iran's economy is 4 times larger than Israel's economy. They've got a GDP of close to 2 trillion. Why is that? Because Iran has some of the world's largest known oil and natural gas reserves. I think Iran is number 2 in natural gas, number 3 in oil, behind like Saudi Arabia, Venezuela. So they've got a tremendous amount of resources.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask real quick here. Let me ask you this. On that same vein, do you believe energy independence from the U.S. is a good thing to manage that relationship, or as we become more independent, will they become a little bit more aggressive? Because at that point, we really don't need the oil out of the Middle East if we are able to develop enough energy on our own.
I think that would be helpful to us. I mean, I think that Iran's oil goes in different directions. I think it primarily goes east because of the sanctions that we have against Iran. We have some of the most significant and harsh sanctions against Iran than we do any other country. The latest reproach was with the Obama administration and the Iran nuclear deal that we signed, where basically Iran would receive nuclear energy in return for not essentially creating a bomb by enriching uranium, which that deal was scrapped by the Trump administration.
Right.
And relations between the two of us have been pretty cool ever since.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So with what Iran has, I don't even want to say what Iran has done. I don't even want to say what Iran has responded to. It makes me wonder now, where is the American position on this? I mean, I know we don't want to get into another years-long war, but we do have to back an ally, and Israel is an ally.
Right.
So where strategically does that leave America in this conflict? That's a big question.
It is a big question. It is a big question. I wanted to respond to the first part of your question about kind of what Iran has done, because a lot of people I don't think about this, but Iran as a nation state is fairly predictable in how they operate. So in 2019, in response to, there was basically this Saudi Emirati / US military supported alliance against Yemen. So there was a Sunni government in Yemen that got overthrown by a Shia group, and then you had this group called the Houthis, which I mentioned before, which basically took over large parts of Yemen, and then the Saudis were trying to depose them. And in response to that, Iran attacked Saudi Arabia, and they leveled a Saudi oil refinery with really a similar cocktail to what they put up 2 days ago, which was a combination of drones and ballistic missiles that they shot at the Saudis. So they attacked Saudi Arabia directly in 2020, and a lot of people forget about this, or I guess, and basically end of 19, beginning of 20. The Trump administration killed the supreme Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani, who's the leader of the Iranian Quds forces, assassinated him on the tarmac at the Baghdad International Airport. And in response to that, Iran attacked the U.S. They shot 12 some odd theater ballistic missiles into our Al-Assad air base in the Anbar province in western Iraq with U.S. troops on the base. People forget about that. But I say that to say that, if Iran is attacked directly, they will respond directly, not through militias. Weeks ago, ISIS-K, out of basically Pakistan, attacked Iran, killed a whole bunch of people in a suicide attack, and then Iran shot cruise missiles at Pakistan. So for people that watch this was so for Israel to attack an Iranian embassy, the response was fairly predictable.
Got it.
So basically what you're saying is that if you mess with Iran, it's never like we might do this, or we're thinking about doing this, or we're going to maybe do some recon. It's like, no, you shot at us. We're going to kill as much of your people as possible. Why are you even confused about this? Like, because I look at a lot.
Would respond, right? If you shoot at us,
not exactly
is going to respond. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Not as
so,
quickly as Iranians' response
yeah.
seems to be. Their response seems to be
Well, we are
almost
talking
immediate.
to former intelligence, so I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that there's plenty of stuff he knows that we don't know, and you ain't got to tell us. I don't want to know.
Most likely.
But point being, Iran is not, like you said, a situation, militiamen have to go out and do this. They have a army
Mm-hmm.
that are in place that are there to respond to whatever conflict, good, bad, that they have. So what is your perspective on people who believe, I saw a friend of mine posted that today, but did I just witness the start of World War III, where we've been talking about World War III now for many, many years? What is your perspective on where this is going? Because here's what we do know, too. We're in the middle of presidential election cycle in the United States. I'm pretty sure that
You mean clockwork? We're in the middle of clockwork, the every 4-year clockwork, right? Isn't that what we call it now?
Right, but we are in the middle of something that if Trump was in office right now, who knows the theater that we would be dealing with right now with this conflict going on. But what's your perspective on what is going on and how it's going to affect how we're going to be moving here in the immediate future?
Well, I honestly think that that's the end of it, which is another pattern.
Okay.
You attack Iran, Iran's going to attack you back, and then then that should be the end of the conflict. So Iran has said very clearly, this is the end from our perspective. But if you retaliate against us, what we're going to do is I think they said 10 times worse. And Israel's Iron Dome was extraordinarily successful the other day because Iran came with 300 some odd cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, drones launched from not only Iran, but also Yemen and Lebanon and Syria, I believe. So 4 different locations, and the U.S. played a major role. We played a major role. We had 2 destroyers on station, USS Ali Burke, which is it's almost like a missile cruiser, but like a destroyer. It's its own class of destroyer that shot down some number of these. We had F-15s on station, shooting down drones, shooting down missiles. It's not clear how, I think only a couple actually got through. It's not clear how successful the Iron Dome would have necessarily been without our help. And so I think...
Go into a little bit more detail on that Iron Dome for those of us who don't know. So we would be visualizing it's just a real dome that came up, but that's obviously not what it is, a physical dome. Talk to us a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, so I'm not up on all the details, but basically there's layers of missile defense that they're capable of, from kind of close-in weapon
shooting
systems.
Up missiles to shoot down missiles that are coming in, right?
Yes, they have interceptor missiles. They're kind of the highest tier, can even take out things that's essentially in orbit around the Earth. If someone were to if a country were to shoot like a stage 3 kind of ballistic missile at Israel, they can knock those things down. And so the technology, and a lot of it is American-made technology, but it was extremely effective the other day. Yeah, so, sorry, Miguel, but to your question about the U.S. election, Biden has said that America's support for the defense of Israel is ironclad, that we will support Israel defensively. Yes. But he's also said that, at least what they're saying publicly, is not to attack Iran, not to retaliate. I think a line of departure would be another round of retaliation, and we could have, I don't want to say World War III, but definitely a theater level war that it would be harder to put that genie back in the bottle. The opportunity to put the genie back in the bottle is now.
Go ahead, Kim.
Can I ask another important question? So Israel is now fighting with Iran. America is trying to keep this from going to World War III, like you said. Where on God's green earth does this leave the Palestinian people who are suffering, who are still fighting with Israel? Where does it leave them? I feel like with this happening, it's almost like they've forgotten that these people, the whole country has been decimated and they're starving and being starved. So how is this supposed to work from a humanitarian point of view?
Well, that's a good point, Kim. I don't think in the short term, I don't think that it helps.
No,
because it just takes this. People are now more worried about a regional war in the Middle East than they are with the Palestinian situation, which the U.S. was committed. We've been both supplying bombs and munitions to Israel and also dropping food into Gaza at the same time. and
which is
trying
insane
to.
to me. That's the most
Yeah.
bizarre. Isn't that the most bizarre thing you've ever heard? We're helping people kill you, but here's this rice that we're
No,
going to drop in this
that
one spot
sounds
and
like
have
war to me.
millions of people rush to it at one time.
Sounds like
I don't
modern war
know.
to me.
I'm sorry.
And then you had the situation with the humanitarian group with the chef Jose, forgot his last name.
World Kitchen.
Yeah.
It's called World Kitchen.
World Kitchen, where they had direct hits on their people sitting on the ground feeding people, and so, and I just you look at this thing, a lot of people who are on the fence with Biden. The reason why they're on the fence is based on the Palestinian situation and knowing how to deal with that thing. This is a cluster in the middle of an election cycle that for people who believe that Trump will be handling this any better than what's handling right now, you are delusional. I'm really, really concerned about how this will be if Trump gets reelected. What his response will be, and I know some people say he's just a blowhard or whatever. But all this seems to be all the military folks who had some sense. He ran them out of there. They said, "Man, let me put in my retirement papers. I'm done. I can't deal with this clown." But what do you think, from your perspective, are your current former colleagues dealing with as a military community right now with this going on?
Yeah, well, I think people are paying attention to it. I mean, there's still the war in Ukraine that
right.
Right. The Ukrainians are actually feeling as though.
Let's not forget about Haiti what's going on there.
Oh yeah.
Which we seem to always ignore that, and that's right off the coast of Florida. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Jump in.
Yeah. No, Miguel. I think America's tired of war. Kind of where you were going, Kim. Like, I mean, it was sort of the whole war in Afghanistan. The war in Afghanistan's old enough to fight in Afghanistan. You had a war that went on there for 19
goes back
years.
To 91. 91, 92 is when we really started, when this really was in our face. I remember, 91, 92 was when it's really, the first was Desert Storm was first, or Desert Shield was first. Desert Storm was first. And then so you get into, I've got buddies I went to high school with who did 5 and 6 tours. So you're right. We are exhausted, but I think in a lot of cases people are numb because there's so few people in America now who have served or who are connected to people who have served. Right.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of kids that have never, they in the conflict, and let me not diminish what's going on in America, dealing with police and all the things we dealt with the last 10 years. But there's some real stuff. You just imagine, I can imagine going outside of my doors and there's just rubble, right? Well, first of all, if there's rubble out there, this is going to be rubble that I'm in, right? So just being able to find somewhere to even live, right? And being able to, like you said, the Palestinians, 2 million people living in the area, Israel's the size of New Jersey, and the other. So you're talking about a really, really small, about the size of the northeast of the United States, that is in shambles, from the top to the bottom. It's just crazy, man. I'll let you close out. Anything, last words you want to drop on us before? Go ahead, Kia. See your hand up.
Yeah. Well, before I'm going to give you a little bit of I always got to give a fun question, but it's going to be a fun question tied into this conversation. I'm just going to let you talk. We're not going to interject because we do that a lot. We're so sorry. So with everything going on, there actually have been films that have been kind of, mimicking life and bringing a little bit of creativity into reality. And it's getting a little bit scary. So when you see movies like the new movie Civil War that's come out, that's slated to come out, I think comes out next month, and then movies like Leave the World Behind, what are your thoughts about those movies when it comes to what's actually happening? And we're going to be quiet and let you answer. Okay.
In the context of the U.S. or the context of the Middle East? Because I have lots of Civil War thoughts. I've actually been reading a lot of the great Civil War.
We're just going to let you talk. Go. You go.
Brother. Your floor.
Your floor. You go.
The Civil War, let's say that in the context of the U.S. because it's a lot of people running their mouths right now on both sides. But this Civil War thing, when I saw the trailer for that, I said,
no, you're talking too much. Let him talk. Miguel, go.
No, you're good. Okay, so to the U.S. we go. I think there are very real Civil War scenarios and possibilities. I could envision a Civil War scenario looking something like what happened in Charlottesville, that just doesn't end, meaning that it just kind of continues. So right now you've got the governor of Texas building this fence in direct conflict with the Border Patrol and the U.S. government. You've got the Texas National Guard. You've got Trump telling other states to send their National Guards to Texas over the border issue. But I could envision, it wouldn't be north and south. It might be more urban and rural, but I could envision, some type of disturbance, like I said, like Charlottesville, where you had a Nazi who killed somebody, but it doesn't end, right? Like you have people on the left that show up, people on the right that show up, and they just kind of stay there. And I could envision scenarios where if Trump actually got elected, where you could have like a nullification crisis, where he overreaches on some type of law that liberal states don't believe is constitutional, and then they essentially cease to recognize the authority of the U.S. government, and then it kind of just goes from there.
Yeah, I want to. Here's the thing, and we were talking about this too over the weekend. This is a difference between the Civil War then and a potential Civil War now. A lot of us are right here in the South. A lot of people are coming back from the North and moving to the Floridas, the Texas, the Georgias, where I am, the Floridas, the Carolinas, the Alabamas, and like you said, we're living in the cities. In the state of Georgia, it's 10 million people, but 6 million of the people live here in Atlanta Metro. The rest of this big old state is a bunch of country folk, and a lot of them who have the mindset that you're talking about. And that is a concern because, from those regards.
And I live in Florida. America's penis. So you already know how that goes.
Yeah. So that's a difficult way. I'm just, there were some stories out there, with the 2016 election that talked about militias. Some of the largest concentration of militias were in Macon, Georgia, which is 45 minutes south of me here where I am. Right. And so I agree with you, brother. I don't know. And then, it's been hard to find ammunition for some years.
Well, the other thing going back to the first Civil War, let's just say 1860, if you read in Grant's memoirs, he was living in Chicago at the time. And based on where he was in Chicago, he was convinced that there was not going to be a Civil War. He said, not going to be a Civil War, not happening. And then even once the Civil War started, he was convinced that it wouldn't last more than 90 days. So much so that you could join the Union Army for 90 days and then go home. That's how convinced they were that it wasn't until the Battle of Shiloh where he was basically like, wow, like this is actually happening. And how many people predicted January 6th? Now, there were some people that did.
Nobody.
But if you're sitting in a coffee shop in Atlanta, or you're sitting in a coffee shop in, you're sitting in a Busboys and Poets in D.C., your point of view may be very different than somebody living in another part of the country that is thinking that there will be a civil war. And that is kind of the disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a smoldering powder keg right now. Brandon, man, we appreciate you, brother. It's been enlightening, and we'll definitely have you on if you want to come hang out with us again to continue to talk about this. Because the next, as the Trump trial criminal trial began today, which I believe they're going to do everything they can not to convict this guy. They really want the American people to decide in November, but that's a whole nother conversation. And the scary part about it is that will they decide? Because, I'm going to run a clip here in a minute with Governor Sununu out of New Hampshire, who flat out said he doesn't like Trump, but he's going to vote for Trump because they just want the power. He didn't even sugarcoat it. He said it with a smile on his face. That's not
a shocker, though.
It's
Republicans don't cannibalize each other. You don't cannibalize each other.
But because it's about power. It's about power. But anyway, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Appreciate you guys.
And we'll hope to have you back in here real soon.
Absolutely. Be well. Thank you.
My man. All right. So
it's always hard not to talk when he's on. It's like we have 1,000 questions and 1,000 comments. Yeah. It's so sad.
Yeah. It's a conversation. It's definitely a conversation. But I want to run this, Sununu, and just continue this conversation before we wrap up because it's an important conversation that's going on. The Republicans are not playing.
And you made a very valid point about a lot of young people don't know anybody who are in the military, so it's not effective when like the draft gets enacted. They have no idea what concept of that is. You have your wife. It was in the military. Yeah, is in the military. I come from a military family. Both of my parents. my brother was in the military, in the Navy. Both my parents were in the Army. My niece wants to go to West Point. Like the Army is my aura. I understand it so much. So if they do implement the draft, and the draft is not only for men, it's men and women under the age between 18 and 25.
Right.
A lot of people are going to be going. So a lot of you people who think you're going to be TikTok influencers, who think you're going to be YouTube stars when you graduate from high school, cut the bullshit, because you might end up on somebody's front line in the military.
And I think that's a whole different issue that we would have, because a lot of them would revolt, and so then you have to deal with that issue as well. What's going on with your Whitney Houston wig today?
Sorry, my wig was doing weird. Sorry.
All right, let's hear this. Let's hear Sununu.
Friends, assuming Chris Sununu is remembered at all in history, he'll pretty much be remembered for this.
Her hair right.
About that. I hate the election denialism of 2020. Nobody wants to be talking about that in 2024. I think all of that was absolutely terrible. But what people are going to be voting for, the reason I'm supporting not just the president, but a Republican administration. That's what this is. They want a culture change in Washington. All the rules and policies that pound down on the American people. All the wokeness, right? The fact that folks in Washington, liberal elites in Washington, want to stand on the shoulders of hardworking American families that built this country, defended this country, and tell them how to live their lives. They're angry. They're upset. That's the culture change that people want to see. People are upset by January 6th. They're upset by the election denial. They have every right to be. I am. But at the end of the day, they need a culture change to get America back on track.
So, but wait a second right there. Your words were very, very clear on January 11th, 2021. You said that President Trump's rhetoric and actions contributed to the insurrection. No other president in American history has contributed to an insurrection. So please explain, given the fact that you believe he contributed to an insurrection, how you can say we should have him back in the Oval Office.
It's not, because for me, it's not about him as much as it is having a Republican administration, Republican secretaries, Republican rules, a sense where states' rights comes first, individual rights comes first, parents' rights comes first. We're going to have a pro-business economy. We're not going to have a cancel culture that has really infiltrated all across America. It's not about Trump with me. It's about bringing those more.
But he will be the president.
Right?
So I'll grant you that.
None of these things are happening.
But
I swear to God, none of these things that he's talking about is. As a Republican, it infuriates me that him and Candace Owens are acting like these things are happening that are not actually happening. There are no late-term abortions that are happening. There is no liberal elites want all these things to change. That's not what is happening. And it's embarrassing to have them get on these stages and get on these platforms and say all these things are happening that are not actually real. There's no liberal East Coast elites who are trying to change the way America works. It's not what's happening.
Of course it's not, but it's all about what they believe. There's a couple things he said, and I don't know if we got to it yet. One thing he said, 51% of all, because me and 51% of Americans want this. No, 51% of Republicans want this. See, what's interesting, people like Sununu and a lot of these Republicans, they think the rest of us aren't even here. They paint these narratives, and these idiots that listen to this, to their echo chamber, believe that this is what everybody thinks. Everybody doesn't think this. Half of the people on your side of this community don't want this, right? And so when you look at what he's talking about, and when they make statements like "we built this country," my wife served. There are plenty of black folks that have fought in these wars, and Hispanics and gays and every lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So all this you owning the patriotic narrative bugs the hell out of me, because I just know too many black and women patriots and LGBTQ patriots
and gay and Asian and Middle Eastern Hispanics
who have done everything that these boys have done. And so when I look at this stuff, but this is where we are. Sununu is supposed to be one of the more, moderately minded. He's in New Hampshire. Like, he's not in the South. He's in the Northeast, right? And so, but this is where we are. They're not even hiding anymore. He flat out said, we don't care. We don't like Trump. Stephanopoulos said flat out, you said in 2021 that he was a part of the insurrection. And he just says with a smile on his face, yeah, right. I said that. I don't deny I said that. So he's like, why would you want an insurrectionist as being the president
disturbing.
again?
I'm a Republican, and I say this, I'm a Republican, and I'm an American through and through. I do not want someone who will incite an insurrection as my president. I don't care if he's Republican or Democrat. It's not okay. It is not okay that you stand behind a podium and lie. It's not a podium that you use the God that me and Miguel both love, and you use him as a weapon rather than the faith and force that he's used for by a lot of us Christians. He uses God as a weapon against other people. That's not Christianity. That's not the love of God. And for everybody to be like, oh, he's a Christian president. He is not a Christian president.
He's not.
He's not even a good man. He's not even a good person. Look, all of his children, most of his children were born because he cheated on the last chick. That's how most of his kids were born. His ex-wife, who's with him the longest and gave him 3 kids, is buried on a golf course, for God's sakes. His current wife only comes out of obligation because she has to. He has not done anything for any community. The only thing he's done for, and again, I'm a small business owner. When he was in office, my taxes were fine. It was great. I didn't owe back money. But that is, I can sacrifice that. When I think of America, I'm an American. I am a patriot because I think of everything as a whole when it comes to America. It can't just be, I'm only for American values. That doesn't work. Miguel's not a Republican. My mama not a Republican. My husband's not a Republican. I want everybody to be happy. Yes, I have my core beliefs.
Right.
I do. I have my core beliefs. I believe that
many of my beliefs will align the fiscal responsibility, being a small business owner, all of that stuff largely are things that Republicans really tout. But from a social standpoint, there is very little to nothing that Republicans entitled over the last 50 to 60 years that have benefited the African-American or Hispanic community, or very little women. It's all about this hierarchy. It's all about this assimilation that is demanded by these folk. The fact that he can have this conversation like, this is what we as Americans want. No, I'm an American. I don't want that shit. I don't want Trump.
I'm an American Republican. I don't want that. I can't. Trump in office. He can't be in office.
You know, yeah. And
knowing that he's going to go after revenge.
Right.
People keep forgetting that part. He has made it very clear that if I get in office, it is not about the American people. It is about me getting revenge on every single person that did me wrong, slight me in any way or another. How is that okay? How is that American values? Revenge.
Well, you know when it's all said and done, this is a country which has been ran by white men from its existence. They came over here and stole this land from people and said they weren't here, right? So
let's not go down this rabbit hole.
We'll
be here till 11 o'clock at night,
and we're not going to be here that long. But the point being is that it's really the worst thing about Trump is that there is no acting like this is not what it is. It is what it is. This is the way it's been moving in quiet. You know, when I mentioned earlier in the show, kid in Chicago they shot at him 96 times. Like, how many times do you need to hit this to do whatever it is you want to do? This is the country that we live in. It's just totally unfortunate. So anyway, all right, on a lighter note, I know you said you wanted to somehow what? Do you want to do that before we get out of here, or are you out? You
I'm not going to do our traditional what. I'm just going to ask, what is Miguel and Tracy watching? Don't say something stupid. I'm just playing.
So we're watching. We picked up this new show this weekend, and I want to get the name straight. I think it's Daria from Detroit. I think it's called.
Yeah.
Is that the right name?
We're not watching it, but I heard about it. Yes, it's Daria from Detroit. It's got Felicia Rashad in it. Hey.
And Felicia Rashad is not Claire Huxtable, y'all. She
ghetto grandma.
She dropping F-bombs and a little bit of everything. You know, here's the funny thing about Detroit. My 2 younger brothers grew up in Detroit. And when I talk about people who are funny, like, I love Baltimore people, especially Baltimore women. I think Baltimore women are hilarious. You know, Monique, just hilarious.
They are. That's my cousins and aunties.
Man, they're just hilarious. It's the accent and the attitude and the energy that they bring. But I'm starting to love women from Detroit. And because some of the people who I know from Detroit, I didn't know that they were from Detroit. When I listen to their accent and their mannerisms and their energy, that's why they're funny as hell to me. So
where is Isn't Tracy from Detroit?
No, Tracy's from Milwaukee. She's from Milwaukee.
Milwaukee. That's when you guys got married. Milwaukee. Okay, yeah. Milwaukee.
So here's the thing. The show is kind of a blend between Insecure and some sort of mystery drama. So it's kind of like it's Insecure.
So it's Insecure and true crime.
Kind of, yes. Just to make it simple. but it's dramatic. So you imagine Issa Rae's character from Insecure trying to solve a crime. And she's acting like she's a detective when she's really not. Here's the funny. She's not a detective. She's a damn school teacher who don't know how to mind her business. So the whole show is about, and this isn't giving anything away because this happens at the very beginning. She goes on a date with this guy. She is infatuated with him, and then all of a sudden she's like, and then he disappears. And the whole show is about her finding him and finding out why he disappeared and how he's connected to this child disappearing 25 years ago. That happens in the first 30 minutes, so I ain't gave nothing away. We've watched the first 6 episodes. It is funny. It is funny. I like it. The other thing that I ain't watching, and if I ever watch it, I ain't telling nobody I'm watching it, that damn Good Times trailer.
Oh yeah, I was gonna, because an intern Alexis, but definitely put it on the list. And I will not be watching that show. I don't give a damn. Because see, there's a difference between this Good Time show, because people should keep trying to compare it to the PJs. Remember the cartoon The PJs that came on Fox?
I do.
These two things are night and day, because the Good Times is based on a real show. Yes. You know why? Wow. Good Times is based off of a real show that showed a family wholesome together. Yes, they lived in poverty, but they weren't crackheads, craziness, ghetto fabulous.
Can I give you an unpopular opinion?
Sure.
I can't watch Good Times. It is too depressing.
Why?
It is too depressing. In actuality, if you go back and watch Good Times, Florida was the villain. She kept them in the hood time in and time again. That's a whole different. I'm not a Good Times fan.
I hope there's not black women watching this show, because that seems a little black.
It is what it is. Florida Evans kept them in that hood. Every time they had a chance to get out, it was Florida Evans that was messing it up for them, including some opportunities. And some of the stuff I forgot because I stopped watching The Good Times 25 years ago. I just can't do it. It's too depressing.
So what was your old school black show?
No,
the one with Sherman Hemsley?
I was much more of a fan of the Jeffersons and didn't even realize.
I was going to say the Jeffersons.
Right. I was the Jeffersons fan because he was funny and he was making money and he was I didn't realize then, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I was going to be an entrepreneur, but he was an entrepreneur, right? He was upperly mobile. He knew how to deal with all types of people. He was unapologetically black. I loved all of that, even as a kid. The Good Times, just like, it was so much struggle. It was just struggle after struggle after struggle. And then, when I saw this trailer come out, and I saw this damn baby was a drug dealer, I said, God, dog, y'all done made a baby a drug dealer. This dude.
Okay. In their defense, remember Bebe's kids? Remember Bebe's kids? The baby and Bebe's kids?
Here's the funny thing. You talk about Bebe's kids and you talk about the PJs. That type of comedy that's like Cat Williams to me. If I catch it.
Is it?
Because it's so hood. It is so, I've been called black bourgeoisie when I was broke as hell. So it don't matter. That's just what they've been calling me my whole life.
I can see that.
The whole PJs, that's just so hood. It's not something that I can relate to. My peoples ain't cussing.
No, the PJs.
Up. My neighbors didn't. I didn't live in those type of, even though I did in DC, I had those type of environments. But it just, I shielded that stuff. And when people laugh at that type of stuff, that type of comedy to me doesn't resonate with me.
I feel you. PJs was something I watched for fun, but what was the other show? We just said it 2 seconds ago. My brain just went blank.
And you just forgot. I forgot it too. Boondocks.
How do we get?
It wasn't Boondocks. It was something else, right?
No, but Boondocks was a show that I watched, and then the other show we were just talking about. That is a show that I enjoyed. I like watching that show. That was the vibe. That show was definitely a vibe whose name we can't think of because it flew out of our head. That's like, how did that happen?
There are so many things that go unanswered. Because I remember, I think in the last episode of Good Times, everybody was getting ready to succeed, right? Michael was going to law school, and I want to know whose kids these are. That they are back in the same apartment that they were in 50 years ago. That is the same apartment that they were in 50 years ago. Whose kid is this? Is it JJ's kid? Because that's James Evans supposed to be their grandfather. So whose kid is this? And it's a funny thing. It's so bad. All the people who I've seen who've written stuff, they don't even explain that part. They don't say, well, this was so-and-so's kid. They just say, this is some terrible, terrible.
Well, it would make sense. Okay, well, I will say that, I guess, and we're going to a little bit of a deep dive before we wrapped up, the imaginary watch I'm looking at. Right. It does make sense when you think about it. Childcare is so expensive. So expensive right now. Even if they were lawyers, doctors, business professionals, childcare expensive as heck. So if you got free childcare, we'd be like, hey, so I'm gonna drop these kids off at whatever. When they get to school, they gotta come stay with you. Does that not make sense why they end up over there, even if their parents are decent, well off? Me and Omar do well. We can't afford $4,000 a month for childcare for Gremlin 1 and 2 that's sleeping right now or pretending to sleep.
Pretending to sleep. I don't know. See, now you got me like, am I going to watch the first episode just so I can see? I've seen people. I've heard people who said they watched the first 5 minutes and they just turned it off. It was so bad. It was that bad.
I wouldn't watch it.
I don't know.
So what I'm watching before we wrap up, I actually watch, and I would recommend this. I know you and Trey aren't documentary people, but I am. Alex Jones versus the Truth. Alex Jones versus the Truth on HBO.
You like. Alex Jones is who?
This isn't true crime.
Who is Alex Jones? Alex Jones.
InfoWars, Alex Jones.
Oh, I don't pay any attention to him, but go ahead.
But let me tell you why it's a good. It's Alex Jones versus the Truth. This is specifically how Alex Jones started the rumor and the hoax about Sandy Hook shooting being a hoax, and how that affected the parents, and how he went into the court trial, and how in the first trial he was sympathetic talking to the parents, and the second trial he was so angry about losing the first trial. It covers all of that, and they actually have people in this documentary who say Sandy Hook was a hoax. Are you guys insane? You guys are dumb if you even believe that. If they want to prove it to us, they need to exhume these children's bodies. Like, honey, we already talked about Bob Marley, One Love. Yes, he's already seen it, but I do recommend it. So I watched that. The other thing Omar and I are trying to watch, and we like it, but it's weird to get through it. It's called The Regime. It's also on Max. It's starring Kate, one of them Kates, one of the white Kates. The white Kate from Titanic. She's in it. One of the white Kates. And it's a very interesting movie about the fall of a regime in Eastern Europe where she's the dictator.
What is it called?
It's like it's called The Regime.
Okay.
It is the darkest of the dark comedies. Me and Omar have gone from looking at the screen to laughing hysterically. It's all over the place, and we love it.
I want to leave you with two things before we get out here. Comedy has I think the reason why I laugh so much at Abbott Elementary is that that's the type of sitcoms we grew up with. Like right now, we're at a point now. We watch so much drama, and of course, I don't even talk to you about BMF and stuff because you don't watch that. So we watch the BMF.
I heard BMF has jumped the shark, and people want it to be canceled. I heard people want it to be canceled now because it has jumped ship.
It's got this one character. She is so annoying. Waiting for her to die. But anyway, she's so annoying. Matter of fact, here's a funny thing. One of the gangsters, I'm going to set it for you. One of the gangsters in BMF is the dude that co-starred with Jamie Foxx on his sitcom that was a real cheesy, light-skinned, tall dude who talked real corny.
From the Jamie Foxx show at the hotel?
Yeah, he's
a gangster?
He's a big-time gangster in this BMF joint. It's funny.
Oh, my God. He's looking for work. Anyway.
But I want to ask you because you in them Republican circles, because I started going down this rabbit hole, and maybe you know the answer. So Trump went to Chick-fil-A in Atlanta Friday, I think it was. And the chick who walks up, gives him a hug or whatever, comes to find out she is a part of some organization. Now, follow this rabbit hole now. She's a part of the organization that Candace Owens started, Blexit, that is owned by Charlie Kirk now, right? Which, of course, Charlie Kirk just fired Candace Owens, right?
Yeah.
And so I said to myself, did Candace Owens get played that she went and started working for Charlie Kirk, sold her organization to Charlie Kirk, and then after a while he went on to let her go, and now she out in these streets trying to cow-tie the black folk? Rabbit hole.
She never owned Blexit. It's not a rabbit hole. She never owned Blexit. Blexit was given to her by Charlie Kirk. It was always his. It was never hers. She was made the face of it. She was made the face of it the same way that Tim Scott and his dolphin teeth are trying to be the face of black conservatism. So she never owned it. Because if she owned it, and this is the truth, if she owned it, she'd be fighting for it right now. Has Candace Owens ever been silent about giving up something? Never. No.
When it comes down to dealing with white men, she gets real clammy when she starts dealing with white men. She clams up real good. All right, y'all. We appreciate y'all.
It's 9:18 and I gotta get this makeup off. Bye, y'all.
Yeah, all right,
we could be here
forever.
Y'all
for hanging with us for a little bit tonight. It's been a pleasure. We'll talk to y'all next week. Peace.